Welcome to the Dreadful Dialogue, a podcast where we chat about all things horror, from interviews, spooky event coverage, movie deep dives, and other spooky things. My name is Alyse, and today we have a returning guest named Anthony. If you listen to our episode about Guatemalan folk horror, you'll remember him. He also has a cosplay alter ego, Antaros, and today he's going to be here with me chatting about the movie from 2007, Death Proof. Welcome back, Anthony. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. It's good to be back.
We're going to be chatting about Death Proof, and before we get into too many details about the movie, of course, we will be spoiling this. And I want to mention before we get too deep into this, if you are a Quentin Tarantino fan, we're not going to cover all of the things that are a part of his universe. There are so many Easter eggs and references and name drops and mentions of Kahuna Burger and all this fun stuff. I can't cover all those. That would literally, we'd need to go scene by scene and line by line to catch all of those. But we are going to be talking about this movie and try to go in depth about it. So Anthony, tell us, why did you choose this movie?
Because, well, one, when Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez collaborate, they always manage to create something where you get a little bit of both of their universes. And not just that, but you almost get a sense of how they started. And like all artists, like Picasso or Debussy, if two random artists got together and worked on something, you could see both worlds apart and together at the same time. And I feel it's a movie that's not really talked about enough. Like, I thought it was great, personally. So that's why I decided to pick this one, because it's not really mentioned out there as much as other of his films or other horrors.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that I forgot to mention at the top that Robert Rodriguez was involved in this film because this was a grindhouse style film, which I believe that style of film started in the 1970s, where they would show two features and usually at drive-ins, and sometimes they would even recycle actors. You'd have one actor in one and they'd be playing another character in the other. And they really I think they really infused that into these movies, right? We're making them grainy, I don't know what you call those things, like the film spot. There was a lot of
The bad
homages.
quality, the scene jumps, yeah, all that.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that they integrated that into that, and they even make it like a part of the scenes. I don't they don't if you watch Death Proof, there's two versions of the movie. There's a shorter version, and then I guess there's a longer version, and from what I understand, that has to do with the original release of them. For some places, they released them where you could watch both of the movies, and for some, they didn't. If you watch the Death Proof all by itself, you'll get a bit of a longer version, and, like, the scene with Arlene, right, when she does her little dance, if you get the shorter one, they cut it out. They say, "Oh, the footage is lost," which is funny because they do that with the double feature movie, Planet Terror, which is the other one that Robert Rodriguez technically directed that was part of this. We're not gonna talk about Planet Terror, but that was the double feature that was part of this movie.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is people didn't know about Death Proof because they forgot about the aspect of a double feature. Tarantino and Rodriguez specifically did this because they wanted to bring back the double feature. But when people came and they saw Planet Terror first and it was over, everybody was going home. And that's when Tarantino started realizing people didn't know there was a movie after Planet Terror. So he had to start sponsoring Grindhouse and with two different posters after that. And he had to make sure that the titles were highlighted. So people used to think Grindhouse was just Planet Terror because that's what they saw. They saw the lady with the machine gun, but then he had to make sure they saw the car from Death Proof so people would get the idea there's two movies here.
Yeah, it was such a cool concept. I didn't see either of these in the movies. When do you remember the first time that you saw these movies?
The first time I saw both of these movies was actually during COVID.
Oh,
The-
really? So then you saw them later in the game. Okay.
yeah, I saw them way later in the game. Like, I knew about them before, but I had no interest in them. And then when COVID came around, I saw them with my dad, and I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, I don't think I saw them. I did not see them in the movie theater. I can't even recall when I first saw them, but I'm pretty sure that I caught them separately, and it was such a cool concept. What I love about them, and I guess if you saw them in the theaters in their entirety, you could catch all the trailers. And they have these fake trailers that they made that look just like Grindhouse style trailers, and those actually went on to become separate movies. So that's where we got Danny Trejo's Machete and the recent Eli Roth Thanksgiving. So that's really cool that now that like Thanksgiving's recently been released and Machete's become its own franchise, you can go back and watch those original fake trailers that they made for these Grindhouse double feature. And it's amazing that they ended up becoming actual movies all on their own.
Yeah, and he tried to get every aspect of what was the double feature back then and give a taste of it.
Yeah, even like the little commercials, like when it says like, "Oh, we'll be right back." So it's really cool. Depending on which version you're able to get your hands on, you might be able to see some of the trailers or see some of the little intros and outros that they have. So I loved that about it. So when you told me about this movie, and I had asked you because whenever I prep for a movie, I always say, "Hey, I want to know like what made you pick this movie." And you wrote me something really good, and I'm gonna put you on the spot. But is it okay if I read it out loud what you messaged me?
Yes.
You said, "I picked this movie because I felt it was Tarantino and Rodriguez giving us a taste of a slasher film, but in his own way, and we get a bit of everything. We get the slasher, we get the blonde that dies, we get the victims, we get the motive and the killers, weapons of choice, then we get the final girls and the point when the hunter becomes the hunted, and we quickly see things from a different point of view." Man, when I read that you messaged me that, I was like, "Oh, I'm hyped to do this movie with him." Like, you summed up so many reasons why people should tune into this movie.
Oh yeah, I've had like those reasons in my mind, and even when I talk to people and they don't know about the movie, I quickly be like, "Look, here's this reason, this reason."
Yeah, and a lot of people some people, I mean, don't consider it horror, but, I mean, I think people who run heavily in the horror fandom, we think it's a horror movie. So when you ask me, you're like, "Do you think it's horror?" I'm all, "Yeah, I totally think it is." And, like, for all those reasons that you mentioned. So, just a little to back it up a little synopsis for the listeners. So, this movie, it's kind of like 2 movies in 1, right?
That's
Even though
correct.
it's a double feature, but Death Proof itself feels like 2 different movies. We get introduced to a character played by Kurt Russell, stuntman Mike, and he's a stunt driver. We hear about the different movies he did, and in the first sequence, we're introduced to a group of women, and what are their I have all their names.
Well, the main one is Jungle Julia.
There you go, Jungle Julia. Who are her other friends? We have Arlene, played by Vanessa Ferlito, and we have Shanna, played by Jordan Ladd. Shanna Banana, not Shauna, because there's a whole thing in the movie about her name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they go out for a night on town, and they encounter Stuntman Mike, and Stuntman Mike comes off as like, I won't lie to you, comes off as like this hot, charming guy, and he's playing sober at the bar. But he eventually talks Rose McGowan's character, played by Pam, and she's a more minor character. She's the blonde, one of the blondes, right? And talks, gives her a ride home, and that's when the craziness happens. He gets her in the car. He calls his car death proof because he says he's a stuntman and he's rigged this car that you shouldn't get hurt in it. And that's where all the red flags start going off. Gets in the car. He actually follows the other group, Jungle Julia and Arlene and Shanna, and he ends up killing them. And that's where that first part of the movie ends. And then we get to see another group of women, the same thing. It's a group of young women. They're out to have a good time. They want to do something with the car. They want to what's the way to say this? They talk somebody into lending them this really cool car so that they can do this crazy stunt. And he does the same thing. Stuntman Mike tries to run these chicks off the road, almost kills them, but they get the final word on it because they get revenge on him. So that's kind of a off the top of my head synopsis. Go check out the movie so we can fill in all the blanks, but I always try to give a little synopsis at the beginning. So hopefully, I don't know if I missed anything. You can let us know.
Oh no, I think you nailed just about every important thing that should catch the audience attention and curiosity to come watch this film.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you haven't checked it out, even though we spoiled it, there's way more. I just barely touched on it. There's so many details in it, and there's great dialogue like every Tarantino movie.
Rock solid dialogue.
Yeah,
Also.
yeah. So Stuntman Mike, what do you think made him such a good antagonist and a good killer?
Oh, I've been waiting for this question forever. All right, so Stuntman Mike. So he himself gives it away because he used to get the thrills from being a stuntman. Like, you could tell his looks, he comes in. He was a hot shot in his time. And then at one point in the movie, when he asks Pam, how do you think they do all those race scenes? And she says CGI. You could see his disappointment. He says, sadly, now more than ever, you are right that back in the all or nothing days, we had live people in real cars crashing into real things. And that was his thrill. So throughout the movie, we get this, we understand because the movie's not set in the 70s. Even though when you see it, you think, oh my God, there's a 70s theme to this, 60s,
Mhm.
70s. But you realize, wait, she mentioned CGI, the phones,
They're texting, it's early
they're-
texting, right? The
it's already
graphics are,
texting.
but it's clearly not the '70s, even though the music and the vibes and the aesthetics are all '70s. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's when your mind kind of gets warped and you almost forget about it for a second, but then you realize, wait, no, it's modern. Tarantino had to make sure he remembered it was modern, even though his world is all the 70s and before. So back to the point of stuntman. Because of CGI, there's no need for stunts or no need for them as much. So stuntman Mike is more as a has-been now. His need, his importance has declined because of CGI, because no one needs to go all out and get like 50 cars because you don't know which one's going to survive at the end of the crash. So his new thrill is now seeking people that he could lure and eliminate and getting his thrills that way, finding a reason for him to just feel that adrenaline that he did back when he was a stuntman. So that's why he's such a damn good antagonist. Not how well he's masking himself, because even Tarantino's bar character would vouch for him that he's a great guy, especially when Pam was saying, "Hey, do you know anyone who could give me a ride up in here?" And then Stuntman Mike quickly tosses his keys to her, and she says, "Are you offering me a ride?" And he says, "I'm offering you a lift if and when I'm ready to go. You are too." And I'm just like, he's so smooth about it. He doesn't look at her face. He's focused on his nachos. He makes it clear he hasn't had a single bit of drink throughout the night. He's not only playing, he's playing all the green flags then and there. Pretty much a guy that, even if she said, no, I don't want to ride from you, he could play that, okay, fine. I never cared anyway. He didn't even try to play, I'm trying to be a nice guy type of thing. He was just playing, well, if you want the ride, I'll give it to you. If you don't, I don't care. Either way, I'm enjoying my nachos.
Yeah, and he was good, and he didn't even need Pam technically, right? I didn't even think about that till you pointed out, like, if Pam didn't take the ride, he still was gonna go take out the rest of the girls. He's
Yeah,
his plan
Pam was just
it was just bonus for him.
yeah, it was just a bonus. It was just the pre-thrill before the actual thrill. He knew what he was doing when those other women walked into the bar. But Pam had to be the touch. Pam had to be the blonde that dies, like in all other slasher films. She had to be the first death.
Yeah, yeah, and I love it's Rose McGowan, she's so beautiful.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
it's so
yes.
funny though that you mentioned his nachos because he's, like, eating them so messily, but I'm like, "Oh, I love nachos." It makes me wanna go get nachos, and I love his dialogue because she's even like, "Well, if you don't drink," and he talks about how he's all, "Oh, I'm drinking a virgin pina colada." She's like, "Why do you hang out at a bar?" And he's all, "Oh, for fun conversation, for nachos," and, like, it's like he knew exactly what he needed to say to reel her in on top of, like you said, she gained confidence in him because people were vouching for him at the bar.
Yeah, and then there's this quote that I love so much that I've even posted sometimes on my profile at work, where when he tells her all that about the nachos and how he's not drinking, she says, "What are you, some kind of cowboy?" And he says, "I'm not a cowboy, Pam. I'm a stuntman." But that's a very easy mistake to make. And I remember when I was working Knott's Scary Farm as a stunt, and somebody even told me, "Oh, so where do you work at night?" I'm like, "Oh, I work at Knott's." And they told me, "Oh, are you some cowboy there?" And I'm like, "Oh, now it's the right moment to use this quote." And I said, "No, I'm not a cowboy. I'm a stuntman." But you know what? That's a real easy mistake to make. But it completely flew over her head. And I'm just thinking, oh, if they haven't seen the movie, they'll never understand this quote.
Yeah. I'm one of those. I'm a big movie quoter, and they'd probably go right over people's head, and I'm like, "Oh, well," but I got my little laugh. But hold on, let's pause this conversation about Death Proof real quick. You're a stunt actor and not I didn't know this. You're a stunt actor at Knott's Berry Farm?
Yeah, so, in, 2022, I applied to work in 2021, but I couldn't get the job. In 2022, throughout Knott's Scary Farm, their stunt person quit. So they saw, like, my resume, so they pulled it back up again, and they told me, "Hey, could you work from this point to this point?" And I'm telling them, "Okay, what do I have to do?" They told me it's pretty easy, just you have this gurney that's latched onto you. It's considered a stunt position. You're gonna be a hellhound, so in the maze, when they walk through, you're just gonna, like, leap forward, and you're almost gonna land on them, but you're not exactly going to land them because the gurney's gonna hold you. So that's all you're going to do, just lean forward, lean back, and stare people, growl. So that's it. And
Okay,
I
we're
said,
gonna have to do a
"Okay."
whole episode. We're gonna have to do a whole episode on being a scare actor and
Oh, yeah,
being and
no,
adding the
you
stunts
definitely
to
need
this.
an episode on this. It's a different world. It's a whole other type of you fall down the rabbit hole when you're a scare actor.
Wow, that's you know what? It's like you okay, and I know this sounds literally cheesy. You have perfect timing. When you hit me up about the previous episode, when you messaged me, you're like, "Hey, what would you think about doing an episode about folk horror and horror shorts and this and that?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I just talked about that on the previous episode." And you hit me up, and that's something I've had in the back of my mind too. I'm like, "Oh, I need to hit up a scare actor," but all the ones I see on Instagram, I'm like, I don't know them personally, but all right, you're gonna come back at some point. You will be coming back to do more folk stories for us,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I'm
And
preparing
more of
more
the
stories
culture.
as well. I
Yeah.
recently came back from a trip to Guatemala, so I'm back with more stories.
Oh, man, that's awesome. I can't wait to go visit one day. Everybody people who if you listen to the previous episode, you guys know that's where my husband's family's from, and yeah, one day I'll get to visit. Alright, so let's go back to Death Proof, though. I was like, "Wait a minute, hold up, I didn't know this." But we I don't wanna take up the whole episode about it, but we will be talking about that on another one. That's amazing. Alright, so in terms of being a slasher, what do you think made this different than, like, other traditional slasher films? Because this film kinda takes a weird turn. What did you think about how it does that? How it switches on us?
First of all, it's the weird turn because this slasher, you hardly see a slasher. They'll, for instance, say we saw a Jason film, a Friday the 13th film. And the first half of the movie, you're scared of Jason, you're terrified. You see Jason as this unstoppable being, this unstoppable force that you would never want to encounter. And there's the feeling that no one, unless you are Batman, Superman, the Punisher, some superhero, you won't be able to stop this character. So imagine taking a movie like that, and then the second half of the movie, you realize Jason is such a wuss. He's just a person. He's running. Is Jason really running? Is he scared? Is he terrified? Oh my god! I lost all respect for Jason. I lost all my fear of Jason. I could take on Jason.
Yeah.
That's one of the things.
And that's exactly what happens in the second half of the film. You go from, like, you're not sure about Stuntman Mike. Like I said, the woman in me is like, "Oh, I mean, I'm a Kurt Russell fan, okay? If people can't tell from my voice right now, I think he's handsome. I watch all of his stuff. He's been in the horror genre as well. And he's like this smooth operator, but he has little dorky moments that kinda seek him, but that's not bad. There's nothing wrong. Don't when there's nothing wrong with the guy, a little bit of dorkiness, right? But then,
Wrong.
yeah, at the end when these chicks are kicking his ass and again, we're totally spoiling the ending, you have to watch this ending scene. Like, the way that they take him out and the way he's crying and he's like, my arm" was it his arm, his shoulder? I don't remember, and he's, like, crying, it's just like, "Really? Like, you went from being this badass stuntman that killed these chicks and got away with it, and then you just tried to get these other chicks and because they one-upped you? Like, this is how you're acting now?" Yeah, he such great acting, like, the change in his demeanor, in his confidence, it's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. And also, the second thing this is different is because when you think of slasher, the first thing that comes to mind is something sharp. A knife, a pair of scissors. Every now and then they'll break slasher rules where they take out a gun, like Terrifier. But
That scene, right? With the when he first, I'm like, oh damn, I didn't know he was gonna bring out a gun.
You're like, wait, 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 you can do that, you know?
Yeah, that
So,
that came out of left field. Yeah. Oh
so,
my god, I'm wearing Terrifier right now.
oh, that's sick. Oh man, you read my
Yeah.
mind.
Anyway,
And
sorry.
so, his weapon of choice is the one thing no one ever thought of, which was a stunt car. But anyone could say, "Oh my god, I could take my car and do this." But no, see, a stunt car was built like a tank, or ideally, it's built to be super resistant.
Mhm.
And he even explains the importance of the stunt car. He gives us a breakdown. He shows us how the car's built, how it's designed. So before he even uses the car as a tool, we see what the tool is, but we don't know that's the weapon of choice.
Mhm.
So we get the idea, okay, he has this super awesome car. Not only is it a nice Chevy Nova, but it's designed to be able to be resistant. Okay, awesome. And then we realize it's the weapon of choice the moment he kills Pam with it.
Mhm.
The first kill. And he does not waste a single second about it. He straight up tells her, "Oh, that sucks. We're both going left." See, it was a 50-50 chance that you would be going left and then we'd be getting scared. You said right, so you just have to get scared immediately. And then you see the killing happen. And then it clicks to you, oh my God, she's getting hurt in this vehicle and he has such a creative way of killing this person. And then he drops one of the most spine-chilling dialogues that I myself would even be scared if you heard it, in which he straight up says, "Hey, Pam, remember when I told you this car's death proof? Well, that wasn't a lie. This car's 100% death proof. You just really have to be sitting in my seat to get the benefit of it, Lenny." And everything clicks then and there. He's the killer. That's his weapon.
Yeah, because he's saying no, he's in the driver's seat, so it's not gonna affect him. But yeah, it's crazy because when you watch it too, you're trying to figure out like what he's up to, and the only character I think that caught on to him, but still gave in because she did her dance for him was Arlene, right? She had the her
Yeah.
Jungle Julia, the radio DJ had put out to the listeners that, "Hey, if you run into me," because she's really known throughout the city and they've got all these billboards of Jungle Julia. So she's recognizable. She's a beautiful woman. And she said, "Hey, if you run into us, ask my friend." And she said Butterfly rather than her name Arlene. "Oh, if you see Butterfly, ask her to do a dance for you. Ask her to do a dance for you." And she didn't want to do the dance for Stuntman Mike because she thought she had seen him earlier at a place. And you could tell she's even weirded out. And she even tells him, like, when he's like, "Oh, why don't you want to do the dance for me? I think you're lying." Because they claim that, oh, well, she did the dance for somebody already. And she's like, he says, "Oh, are you scared? Are you scared of me? Is it my scar?" Because he has like a scar on his face. And she's like,
Yeah.
"Mm, it's your car." And this is the first time you're watching it. Like, you don't really realize that that's a little foreshadowing to what's going to happen with the car. And we get the same thing that happens in the second story when, oh gosh, which character is it? Kim, the one who's the driver. And
Yes.
yeah, Kim, played by Tracy Thoms, she talks about how she carries around a gun, and somebody's like, "Why do you carry one around?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna get attacked in my laundry room. Nobody's gonna do something to me." And then, sure enough, just like we mentioned with Art the Clown and Terrifier, you forget that she has that weapon, and she ends up using it on Stuntman Mike, and that's not even like the half of it. I mean, yeah, she shoots at him, it doesn't really get him. I mean, but it's when they beat him up that they really get him. So it's really cool that the difference in the foreshadowing. We're getting the foreshadowing more in the second one because we know Stuntman Mike. In the first one, I don't think the girls had any idea. Arlene had a slight idea, but man, as soon as, like you said, as soon as Pam gets in that car and he tells her, it's on. He
It
uses
was
that
done
car as
for.
a weapon.
She was doomed.
Um, So we talked about the dialogue. Do you think that the dialogue was distracting in any way, or do you think that it added to the story?
I I feel it did a little bit of both. If you're like my mom, that you want to see action, you don't sit down for like the dialogue, then you might get bored easily because you're more focused on what's going on as opposed to what's being said. But I feel the dialogue also did such a good job as well because if you listen to the dialogue, you get you get a part of the film that's being unfolded. For instance, when you mentioned how Butterfly didn't want to do the dance for him. So there's this whole dialogue about why she doesn't want to do the dance. So then he starts saying, kind of like taunting her. He even takes out a little book and say, "Look, this is my book, and I'm gonna write your name right here." So he plays a little reverse psychology right there. He gets
Calls
in
her
her head.
chicken. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he calls her a chick. He pretty much is calling her a liar and saying that, she doesn't really keep her word until she eventually just agrees what's a dance to this guy. And then we get the dance montage. We get during the nacho scene, we get the more dialogue. He's giving his wisdom. We're getting more stuntman Mike. We're getting a little bit of Pam. Even Tarantino has his bits in there where
Mhm.
he's giving green flags for stuntman Mike. And then there's even more dialogue that gives you that sense of comfort throughout the movie. Even when he says, "Oh, well, there's this glass right here, but I won't be getting fresh with my hands." So the Pam pretty much is saying, "Oh, well, this is safe. He's safe." And then throughout the movie afterwards, there's also more dialogue as well during the second part of it. There's when they're all sitting down, they're all talking about the second group of girls. They're talking about doing this weird stunt on the car, but they don't want to buy the cars. So you get them planning everything out. And that I feel is a reference to Tarantino's first movie, Reservoir Dogs. And they're around the table
At the
speak
beginning. Yeah,
at the beginning.
that's exactly what it's exactly what it is. Yeah, classic Tarantino. Yeah.
So, and Tarantino's all about dialogue. You won't see a Tarantino film where he'll take at least 20 minutes of just dialogue. Tarantino's about dialogue, but his dialogue actually means something. He actually sits down and thinks and has to make sure this dialogue is perfect and it fits to the scene to perfection. And one of his movies that surpasses this and portrays it so well would be The Hateful Eight. That one of the only films that I feel the importance of dialogue. But I feel this was one of his earlier test runs to dialogue in a bit of a thriller slash scary setting.
Yeah.
So
And
unless you're yeah.
go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh,
finish your
sorry.
thought.
Unless you're a Tarantino fan, you probably won't enjoy the dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, if you watch on Glorious Bastards, that opening scene with Christopher Waltz, right?
Mhm.
His whole spill as a Nazi. I mean, it's like same thing. I don't know how long it is. It's really long, but you're like, you get scared of that character immediately. And the dialogue in this really, I think it made us buy into these characters. We saw that they had vulnerable moments. We saw that they had moments of strength. We saw that they were like all these women that had like this strong like sisterhood within them, which really benefits us in the second one, right? Because they're essentially all final girls. Instead of being one final girl, we get multiple final girls.
And there's a sense of
Yeah,
unity.
exactly. And what I also find interesting is that you get the other characters in the bar, and I think one of them's played by Eli Roth, and I don't remember the other actor, and they're even trying to figure out, like, "Hey, how do we get these girls kinda drunk enough that we get to go home with them," right? Because they 'Cause they're gonna go off to one I think Shanna.
They're off to a
Yeah.
cabin or
Yeah, Shanna's
something.
family cabin, but that she had promised her dad, that there wouldn't be any guys there, and they're like, "Well, we get him, like, a few shots, right? And then we switch it to Jägermeister," like, they got this whole plan, and that's when you're actually getting for me, I'm getting red flags from them, like, "Okay, that's not right, like, what if they go and they take advantage of these girls? Like, what are they up to?" And in the end, they're not even the ones that we end up having to deal with, and it's a good way to kinda, like, throw you off of the path of who actually is the bad guy in this, who is the scary who's the
Yeah.
person we should be
It
watching
was
out for.
it was a red herring. It definitely threw us away, and the rest of the movie, we're thinking about those guys. And typical slasher films, there's always the guy trying to get along with the
Yeah, that's
girl.
a t it's a very regular trope in slasher films, and well, in a lot of horror films in general. Yeah, but I thought the dialogue was great. I think, again, it gives you more background, it helps you buy into these characters, helps you root for these characters, but I wanna move now into we talked about how this car was used to kill the women in the first sequence, and then how he uses it to almost kill the other ones. And I wanna talk about I lost my whole train of thought. Hold on. What was I gonna say? I hear my little one crying, making noise. Hold on. What was I gonna? The slasher, the roll of the car. Oh, okay. I want to talk about like their actual deaths. Okay. So
Okay. Yes.
let's talk about. So we talked about that this is a car that he uses it as an instrument of death. It's called death proof. It's only death proof for him. But the movie gets really violent real quick, right? Yeah, I
Immediately.
want to talk about how the three women died and how Tarantino shows us the scene 3 times because we get to see every woman as they die. We get to see, like, what their faces look like, and we get to see the aftermath of what happens to them. What did you think about this scene with all these deaths?
It was at first I didn't know. It was actually played 4 times. There were 4 women's, but there's less attention paid on the
Yeah, that's
driver.
true.
'Cause there's always that one character that has less attention, and in this case, it was the
Yeah.
driver. So when I saw this film and I saw when he's about to kill the other woman, my intention first was he's going to crash them and throw them off the cliff or something like that.
On the road, yeah.
Yeah, a typical thing anyone who's trying to kill someone in a car would do. But then I see what he actually does. He turns up the lights down and he sets his car in full motion to drive face to face with the car being driven by the women. And at that point, I'm just thinking, what is he doing? I forget for a second his car's death proof. So when we
Mhm.
get to the actual car crash, we see how important his death proof car is. And that scene, like you said, was played more than one time. So when we see the crash, we see that one of the women gets a whiplash. She crashes and practically breaks her neck because her neck goes all the way back and all the way forward.
Mhm.
The second scene was a little more gory because they're listening to a song, so they're not expecting the car coming until he decides to turn on the light and catches them by surprise.
Yeah, that's what he did. He had his lights off and right until the last second, and he turned his lights on, and it's like one of these dark roads, right?
A super dark road.
So
So the
that's how he
second
also threw him off.
Oh, and there's nothing scarier than knowing you're gonna die seconds before you know you're gonna die.
Really.
Like, you're not prepared for it.
They say the first thing people always say right before they die.
Is that they see a light.
But do you know what they say? What the words out of their mouth are?
What do they say?
"Oh, shit." As a veteran, I can attest to that. Anyway, I'm alive. Okay, sorry, we went off on a tangent there.
Thank you for your service regardless.
No worry. It is an honor.
The second death I felt was gory and brutal because you see the car crash, how one of the ladies with her leg her leg flies, and you hear it, and then you hear the splat. She loses both legs, and you're just thinking, "My God, that's if somebody just yanked them off." You could just imagine that pain.
'Cause she was sitting with, like, her leg out, right? Like, that's how she always
Yeah,
that's how the film even opens up with Jungle Julia, if I remember right, her leg she's sitting in her car, she's got, like, her leg up, and now, like, I see people sitting that way, and all I think about is death proof. I'm like, "Don't do
I was
it."
just thinking about that scene.
Yeah, one time I was, like, stretching my legs, and my husband's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I know, I'm just stretching really quick." He
I'm
was like,
thinking
"Oh, okay."
on the loose.
Yeah. And then how
And
does the then so then that's Jungle Julia, and then there's one more, right?
there's 2 more. One of the women goes flying up the window, and she also hits the pavement. You hear like splat and cracks, and you see her tumbling. Even her shoe flies off.
Mhm.
And then the last one, which I'm thinking, oh, that was brutal. I should have not.
Yeah.
Way was when you see the wheel of his car grind and pulverize all of her face. Like, it removes anything you'd consider a face, and it really digs deep in there. And there's even a second where you hear the emphasis of how the car is revving, almost as if stuntman Mike knows, oh, this is her face. Let's make it worse right here. And he revs it even more to pulverize and destroy whatever's left of her face. That those deaths, none of those deaths have sat well with me. Pretty much that death in general never sat well with me because I'm just thinking you're driving a car into a tank, pretty much. You're not gonna live. And he drove his car in a way where he could jump just enough to get the upper hand on them.
Yeah.
And then when you see the car crash and you hear the screaming and the noise and everything, you remember everything Stuntman Mike said, how he drove the car back in the all or nothing days where it was real people crashing into real cars. So you realize he's done this 100 times. He knows what he's doing. Except now, he's actually doing the all or nothing in real life. It's either we're all living or you're all dying, pretty much.
And that's what um I don't know if he's a sheriff or a deputy, the law enforcement guy Parks, and I think that's a character that, is in several Tarantino films. He knows, he's like, "I can't prove it." He's like, "The women were swimming in alcohol and they'd been smoking weed, and he hadn't had a single drop of alcohol." But he knew what he was doing and he wanted to get him. And like you always wonder about that, right? Because in the end, we don't find out if, what happens exactly in that sense of what law enforcement does. But it's interesting that the law enforcement guy put all that together, what you're saying now. He knew how to control this car. He probably was into doing this. Yeah, that whole scene is wild, seeing all those deaths, and it's a total Tarantino thing, right? The way he shows it multiple times and you get to see the deaths from each person's point of view. Yeah, it sits with you for a minute.
Yeah, and then that scene with the sheriff, you get a sense of realism. Like the sheriff knows what happened here, and then he lets us sit back and think about it for a second because I was thinking at first, oh, that guy's done. He killed them. He gonna go to jail. But then the sheriff comes back and you see how well planned this was. Everybody was at the bar. There were witnesses, and everybody witnessed Thunder Mike just eating his nachos, and Jungle Julie and the rest of the girls doing all these wild things, drinking alcohol, which is still in their system.
Yeah.
And then he even says, "Oh, what's wrong with him? Broken fingers, some bruises, maybe some cracked ribs. He'll live. He'll walk." But the women, they're all in the morgue. They're done, and you could also sense how upset the sheriff is that it's not enough to nail him as the killer. Even though he is the killer, it will just get brushed off as a freak accident likely caused by the intoxicated women. This man was just driving pretty much. He was just going home when these women crashed into him, and that's the story he's gonna tell them because he's the only one that lived through that experience. So we get that sense of realism, that sense of disappointment, the sense of, man, he's gonna walk.
Yeah. The sense of dread.
That's Brad. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, he was so methodical. I mean, he'd been stalking them, right? I don't think we even mentioned how he has their pictures in his, what do you
Little
call
son,
it? Your
something.
sun, like your sun visor, I think you call it, right?
Yeah, there
Where
we
he
go.
opens it up and he's got, like, all their pictures, and he even has them later in the other one, that was what Arlene knew. She had sensed that she had seen his car earlier in the night, and he's doing the same thing with the other ladies. He's slowly stalking them. He's even taking pictures of them. He even has
He's
that
looking
awkward.
into the binoculars.
Yeah, we even get that awkward scene where, Rosario Dawson's character, right?
Her feet are out.
Yeah, her feet are out. I forget her character's name, and he, like, licks her feet, and you're which if I could ask Tarantino, I don't know if he's into feet because he's always got something with feet in his
There was
movies,
so
right?
much feet in this movie. That's another thing. There was so much feet
Yeah.
in this movie.
Yeah, a lot of scenes showing feet, and then, I mean, he has the whole spill in Pulp Fiction. He has Selma Hayek's feet in
From
in
Dusk Till
in his
Dawn
in his mouth and from Dusk Till Dawn, so yeah, that's another there's gotta be something going on with feet
with
in
the
hi in
feet.
in Tarantino, and he really showed a lot of feet.
Uh,
I hadn't
they're
even
all
done
wearing
with
like sandals and stuff. Like, so the
yeah.
feet stand out even more. So I'm thinking, yeah, there has to be something there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes place, they said, in Austin, at least the first part. I don't know about the second one. It's Austin, and it's like it looks like it's the summer the way they're dressed. So they're definitely wearing their chanclas. What did you think about the music? Did you like any of the music and the soundtrack?
Oh my god, the music Hold Tight was just perfect in that scene. And then the music throughout the ending of it, which was like the car chase, was also perfect.
Yeah,
That music is also, I'm pretty sure it's recycled music from all the car chase scenes we had in the 70s. Or he had in the 70s because we weren't around during that time.
yeah.
So the soundtrack was just Tarantino himself even says that to get inspired for a scene for a movie or something, he'll get his record player and he'll play some music.
That makes
So
sense.
it makes sense. So that's how we get that perfection to it. And he even also had told us that there were two other people that were going to be casted for Kurt Russell's character. The first person was Sylvester Stallone, but Stallone turned it down. Stallone said, I have two daughters and I have a wife. This is not a good image for me. So
Wow.
Stallone didn't take it. And I'm just thinking, Stallone is Stuntman Mike. Wow, I don't know if I could see that.
I kinda could, but I don't think he would have done as good as Kurt
He
Russell.
wouldn't have executed it. And then he offered it to Mickey Rourke. Or Mickey, yeah, Mickey
Mickey
Rourke.
Rourke.
Rourke, there we go.
Yeah.
But Mickey Rourke's manager got in the way. Mickey Rourke had a manager, so the manager said, "No, this is not a role for my character. Here you go." So that's how Kurt Russell went with it. So Tarantino called him and said, "I want to talk to you about a movie," and we showed him the script, and he saw it, and he thought, "Okay, I'll take a whack at this." And I'm just thinking, no one else could have played that character better than Kurt Russell.
No. And well, from what I understand, I read in an interview that it was actually Robert Rodriguez was like, "Yeah, you should," like, he kept telling him, "I don't know why you're trying to get other people. You just need to get Kurt Russell." Like, he was, like, big on having him, and all the actors were really good in this. I don't know if we mentioned some of them. We had Stuntman Mike was Kurt Russell. Um, Sidney Poitier played Jungle Julia, related to the Sidney Poitier. It's his daughter. Vanessa Ferlito was Arlene. Jordan Ladd was, I always have to remember, Shanna Banana, because that's what she tells in
Yeah,
the movie, right? She gives a whole again, with this dialogue, she gives a whole speech. "Any girl named Shanna does not wanna be called Shauna on accident." And she's like, "Remember, it's Shanna Banana." Rose McGowan was Pam, Rosario Dawson is in and then with the second group, Rosario Dawson is Abernathy, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is Lee, Tracy Toms is Kim, and we need to talk about the stunt people, right?
yeah.
Zoe Bell.
It's a real stunt actress.
Yes,
It's
yes.
real life.
Yeah, she's from New Zealand. She is actually a stunt woman. Tarantino, when he offered her the part, she just assumed that it was gonna be like, any other stunt role. And then he shows up to her house and he has the movie poster and it has her name on there. And she's shocked because her name's on there with, like, top billing with the other actors. And she kind of thought it was a joke. And he was like, "No, I really like, you're gonna be in this movie like as yourself." And it wasn't until she got the script that she actually saw, "Oh my gosh, like, my name's throughout this. I'm gonna have to have actual dialogue," and she did a really great job. He even uses her in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and there's no other person playing her. She's doing all those stunts herself. But yeah, I was impressed that she was able to take on this role, and now she's even done some other stuff with it, so that was cool.
And I find it ironic how in this movie, him and So, you could say they hate each other, but then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they're married.
Yeah. Yeah, because they say they're supposed to be the same characters, right? Or related
Yeah,
in
they're
some
supposed
way
to
or
be
inspired.
they're supposed to be roughly the same characters. So
Yeah. So what did you think in terms of this being going back to this being a grindhouse, being a double feature? Do you think that that concept ended up working?
I feel it didn't work the way Tarantino wanted it to, only because people know Planet Terror more than they know Death Proof. Again, when you saw the first Grindhouse poster, you saw the woman with the machine gun. People didn't really know there were two movies here up until later on. Tarantino said people are leaving after the first film. They're not staying for the second film. And I believe he was so disappointed in that because he himself even believes this movie is one of his worst films. He doesn't like this movie that he made. But I feel it's just disappointment that the whole concept of the Grindhouse didn't really hit many audiences. the way he wanted them to.
Yeah. I think a lot of it might have had to do with the marketing, like we said. I think just the poster is more iconic, like you said, for Planet Terror, and the one for Death Proof, it's more ambiguous. You're not quite sure what that you don't even know that they're inferring that the car is gonna be called Death Proof and that it's gonna be this instrument of death. I think it hurt them that there were some theaters where they didn't show it in its entirety, and there were some that did. I think, yeah, that it might have got lost on some people that it was gonna be a grindhouse film, but I thought it was really cool that they tried to resurrect it. From what I understand, they kinda at one point wanna do another one, but I haven't heard much talk about if that's ever gonna come to fruition or not.
Hope it does.
Yeah. So like we said, the movie, you gave us a lot of details about how the women die and how Stuntman Mike gets away with it. And then it takes another turn and we get the new set of women, and that's the group led by Rosario Dawson, Abernathy's character. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I thought this was interesting how even for this part, the movie goes from the 70s style filming to a modern one. So it's almost as if it's saying, okay, now we're jumping into a new era. Now we're changing your concept of what you as a slasher to what you know now. Because we get a new set of final girls. And in this one, we get two women of color. And those women represent a black exploitation era,
Mhm,
especially the way she speaks. And as you
mhm.
said, she mentions she's carried, she's packing, she has a gun. And we don't even know why. And we'll get to that later in the film. So we see Stuntman Mike again, and we're thinking, I feel bad for these new set of women. He's already doing his thing. He has them with the binoculars. He's spying on them. He's sitting on his car with the little angry duck statue on the front, the little like car medallion. It's on the hood of his car. Which, fun fact, that duck was in a movie called Convoy, and the main character Chris Christopherson drives a big rig truck, and he has that exact duck on the hood of his car, and his nickname is Rubber Duck. And Tarantino just gets that same duck and puts it on Death Proof as a homage to that movie.
Yeah. Well, I do wanna point out though, Jungle Julia was a woman of color though. We do have her in the first one, and we have Vanessa Ferlito, but they don't survive, so they're not technically final girls, right?
Yeah, they don't survive. So we get these new girls, and we even see him when Zoe, they call her, but her name is So, is doing that stunt where she's on the hood of the car holding on to two belts, and Stuntman Mike is trying to make her fly off the car. So we get a whole scene of him chasing them. They're screaming, they're crying, they're yelling, they're saying, "Oh man, I'm sorry for what I called you earlier." The audience, or myself as the audience, I'm already
Mhm.
thinking, man, they're gonna die, she's gonna die. And we get to the scene where he crashes and she goes flying off. And he comes out and he's all cocky. He's saying, "Wow, lady, that was fun. Well, adios." And you have this hate for Stuntman Mike and fear for him. And that's when the driver takes out the gun that she was packing and she shoots him. And he screams and he drives off. And that's the moment where you're just thinking, wait, what just happened? Wait, Stuntman got shot? He's fleeing the scene? And you realize Zoe is alive and they're all happy. And even you as the audience, you're like, oh yes, she lives. She's not hurt. Of course she lives. She's a stunt woman.
Yeah.
She's also experienced. So the importance of her being a stunt person, you realize he met his match. He thought he was bad because he could survive all these stunts, but now we have another person who is trained, maybe even better trained than he is, with stunts, and she survived. Stuntman Mike has failed. And that's when the women say, so what, should we get him? And they're like, let's kill him. You're like, wait, kill him? And then you realize they're out in practically the middle of nowhere. There's no cameras. Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody even cares for Stuntman Mike. You get a sense, wait. One killer, but now it's three killers against one.
Mhm.
And then we get to the scene of Stuntman Mike crying, and even my dad lost all respect for him right there because he thought like, man, he's crying like a little B word.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Exactly.
you see him, and you see him.
Yes, yes.
He's even touching where he got shot. And he's screaming really loud, and he's crying, and he's all saying, "Why God?" Yeah,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
takes out his 4 rows. I think it's a whiskey.
Yeah, I get his whiskey out. It's like he was as soon as this was gonna be over, he was ready to celebrate with the drink.
He was ready, but now he's giving the whiskey because he needs to sanitize his wound.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's crying. The moment he pours that, he's crying. And then you also have to admire Tarantino Rodriguez because you're thinking this is how a real person would react when he shot for the first time.
Yeah,
Stuntman Mike may know about stunts, but he doesn't know what it's like to actually be shot at.
yeah.
And you realize that is the moment you realize Stuntman Mike is not a monster. He's a man. He's just a man. He's a psycho, but at the end of the day, he feels pain. He feels fear. He feels he has feelings. Well, he feel the way all of us feel something. So you start thinking, man, I could take out Stuntman Mike. I'll just get off my gun and shoot him. I'm not afraid of him. He's just a man. All we had to do was show
Like
his human side, just fight back. And right as he's calm and he's saying, okay, it's over. You see them come back and you see them crash into him and you see him run away. And that's when we get the concept of the hunter becomes the hunted. And then we go from a slasher to a 70s car chase scene. And we
mhm.
get this amazing car chase and we get the girls chasing him and Stuntman Mike, he's crying and he's running for his life. The killer, the slasher is running for his life. And that whole montage is perfection. And then we get to the scene where they catch up to him and he's saying, I'm sorry, I'll just plead. And you just think, oh my God, he's not a slasher. He's not it's as if you got Ghostface and you managed to injure Ghostface bad enough to the point where he's apologizing to you as Ghostface.
He was pretty clumsy anyway, most of the Ghostface characters.
They were pretty clumsy, that's right.
Yeah. You always wonder, like, why don't these like, the movie coulda just ended when they got away, and that's when you're like, "Oh, man, this is almost like some good feminist horror here," right? Like, they're gonna turn it around, they're gonna survive, they're gonna all be final girls, and they're like, "Yeah, let's go get him," and I love that about it, and it turns into, like, a kung fu movie almost at the end, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm
And
not a big I don't know enough about those movies, but I get that vibes, which
yeah,
Tarantino likes those movies.
he loves those movies. And the thing is, you finally get something you've been wishing for in every single horror movie, whether it was Leatherface, whether it was Friday the 13th, whether it was any of those slashers. You always think, why don't any of these characters, if they had a chance to fight back, they would. Like, even you yourself at some point would picture yourself with like enough power to fight back. And Tarantino gave us this. Tarantino said, okay, now I'm going to give them what they all say. Someone's going to fight back against the monster for one. Someone's going to fight back against the slasher.
Mhm.
And it's funny how the concept of his car is because it's death proof.
Yeah.
You have this notion that his car is resistant. But then here comes a scene where they're
Yeah.
chasing him and he even thinks he loses them for a second. He's even happy. And he's like, finally, Jesus effing Christ, it was about time. And
Yeah.
he thinks it's safe. And then you hear the Jaws theme song and you see their car and they straight out ran him over and his car is destroyed. It's pulverized. It flips. He's badly injured and he's crying. And the women they got out of that car like nothing happened. They're walking out of there all stylish, all cool. He's cooked.
Yeah.
And then you see him on the floor crying. He's defenseless. He's like a baby. His arm is broken and he's even begging for them. He's like, be careful, please. My arm is broken. But they just don't care. And that's when they pull him out of the car and they beat him to a pulp. They beat him to a freaking pulp. And you even just realize he's not bad. He's not tough. He's not even scary anymore. He's a freaking wimp. He's a poser. And the movie gives us that kind of bittersweet ending where one of them just thumps and smushes his face in,
Yeah.
and they're just
I love it.
happy. And I'm thinking, wow, that was a good ending. I'm happy. They killed the killer. You feel bad for him too. You feel bad for him, but then you remember what he
What he
was
did to
from the
those other
first,
women. Yeah.
and then you say, you know what? It was justice.
Yeah.
It was karma. He had it coming.
Mhm. He had it coming.
So I felt the ending to that, like all of that was just perfect. It was cut out to perfection.
Yeah. Some people could argue that it was abrupt, but I thought it was good. I loved it. I thought it was a great, just like you said, the killer got. Like you said, you kinda you're like, "Really?" Like, he went from being this tough guy to, like, now he's whining like a little baby, and he's getting the crap beat out of him, and you're like, "Yeah, he deserves it. You killed those girls at the beginning in the first half of the movie, so good to them." And I just love the, like, I think it even ends with them, like, do they, like, high five or
Yeah,
something? And
they like
yeah,
throw their arms in the air like in victory,
gives me, like, Powerpuff
like
Girls
Powerpuff.
vibes. I
And
love it.
then it was just perfect. I'm just thinking, well, we get an epic chase scene, we get the slasher, we get final girls, and then we get the death of the slasher, and we get that sense of comfort, a weird way of comfort and uneasiness at the same time, because the comfort is he's not going to harm anyone anymore. The uneasiness is, oh my god, he died brutally himself, but he had it coming.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So all in all, I thought that movie really did leave an impression on me. It was well done. Tarantino should not hate on his film that much. The reason I even drive a Camaro right now is because it reminds me of stuntman in my car. And I tell everybody, if I had the money, I would buy a Chevy Nova and I would make it look just like the Death Proof car. I would do that, minus the little seat, that weird seat, but everything
Yeah.
else would be like an
A
eccentric.
cage too?
If I want to do stunts in it.
Oh, man. Wow. Well, that was a really cool conversation. It was really cool having you on, Anthony, again, and tell people where they could find you if they wanna find you on, like, social media or anything that you're into, what you got going on.
Oh yeah, currently I've only got my Instagram page, as mentioned earlier. Thinking of trying out a TikTok at some point, or perfecting my TikTok, but I wouldn't really know what to even put on it that'll catch people's attention. I think it's the real hit or miss.
Yeah, I mean, I started one for the podcast and I haven't I think I've posted one thing, I don't even know how to use it. I just have it there, so I have it for the podcast. At some point, I'll put more effort into it. I think the same with, like, the Facebook. I have one, but I'm like, I don't even use it, so I'm on all of that stuff, but I'm mainly on Instagram as well at, Dreadful Dialogue Podcast and, my website, dreadfuldialogue.com. But it's really cool having you again. We look forward to you coming back. But
Thanks.
now I know I need you to come back twice, right? You're gonna give us
Yeah.
some more folk stories from your country, and also I want to hear more about like what it's like to be a scare actor. That's something that I think would be really interesting for people. I always wonder, I'm like, if it gets boring or if it gets monotonous, and what the day is like getting ready for it. And so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm already formulating my questions that I got.
Oh yeah, please form your questions. I will gladly come back and talk about my life as a scare actor.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We hope that our conversation wasn't too dreadful for you guys. And with that one, have a good one.